in the dying embers of human existence. As the asteroid, a behemoth the size of Texas, hurtles relentlessly toward Earth, the world braces for an apocalyptic end. Deep beneath the bunker, a refuge plunges into the bowels of the earth. Here the chosen gather, their purpose clear, to preserve the very soul of our civilization. The 35 and 70 millimeter prints that encapsulate the magic, the emotion, and the dreams of generations past. These masterpieces, each frame a testament to the human spirit, are carefully cataloged and cradled in the cavernous confines of the bunker. Perhaps there was room for more, for friends and family yearning for salvation, but sacrifices must be made. The movie nerds stand united, the keepers of a flame, promising a future where the art of storytelling endures, transcending the boundaries of time and space. God help us all.
Welcome to Back to the Frame Rate, part of the Weston Media Podcast Network. Join us as we watch and discuss films on VOD and streaming platforms, deliberating on whether each one is worthy of salvation or destined for destruction in the face of the impending asteroid apocalypse. You can find more episodes of this podcast on backtotheframerate.com, where you can subscribe and share our show, and find us on our socials at Back to the Frame Rate. I'm Nathan Shore, and accompanying me are the extraordinary movie mavens Brianna Butterworth, Sam Cole, and joining us as our special guest today is film and television producer Anthony Ambrosino. Anthony Ambrosino is a Rhode Island-based producer and director of film, television, and commercial projects. His films have premiered at some of the industry's top festivals, including the Toronto Film Festival and the Los Angeles Film Festival, among others, and have garnered several awards while receiving worldwide distribution, both theatrically and through companies such as IFC, Showtime Networks, and HBO. Welcome to the podcast, Anthony.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for battling through that long bio.
Yeah, Anthony, you sent me like this huge thing. Like, I was like, nobody's ever done this before, and I guess I'll just read all this. No, that's really great. I know what. I'm really happy that you're joining us today, Anthony. We have known each other going back, I think, to like 2008, and we've been friends a long time, and I'm just really happy that you're joining us. And I've respected you for a long time in this industry. You've done so much. I really do look up to you, as you've done so many projects, and I just want to say that right off the top. So
I appreciate that. I think very highly of you and your work as well, sir.
So I just wanted to say, and the reason we're all here is we're here to discuss the 1993 film Judgment Night, starring Emilio Estevez. And it's a thrill to be here. I've always wanted to talk about this sleeper action hit. Dennis Leary is a great villain. So this is going to be a great conversation, guys.
And later in the night, Hoobastank will be joining us. And
you just lost all your listeners.
but I'm impressed with everyone's ability to book all this talent without me. So, anyways, talent in quotes. Anyways, so what I haven't done this week, because it's been a very, very busy week, I don't have any creative question for our co-host or guest this week. No, because it's been a week. It's been a week, and I'm not going to get into it. But we're going to get right into our discussion and a review of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. But before we do that, I want to just. Anthony's here for a reason, because we're, I think, of similar vintages, I'll just say. And I just knew that this was going to be a film that I think we have probably had a very similar experience, because we probably grew up with this movie. And I have a feeling that you have a lot to say about this, as do I. But I want to know, just Anthony, tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are, what you do, and maybe a little bit about your relationship to this movie without really giving too much away about your review of this. But
sure.
I just asked 3 questions in once there.
I'll do my best. You gave me like Anthony bio-length question. A child of the 80s. I love the classics, as I know you do as well. I like all genres of film, so obscure French films to 90s rom-coms. I don't care. I like them all. There's something to be found in every niche. My relationship to Temple of Doom is it was the first indie film I saw in a theater. My uncle took me.
Cool.
You've already spoiled one of the questions.
I have a special place in my heart for Temple of Doom.
Okay.
I'll save the rest of it. I have a lot. I have a fire hose of information I want to.
Okay.
I did not know that was the first one you saw in the theater. That's pretty epic.
Yes.
Anthony, you've already answered because what I have is a segment here called 4 Questions, which I ask all of our guests here. And it's just so that the audience can get a little familiar with who you are. You've already answered the first question.
Film. No, it's not the first film I saw in the theater. It's the first Indiana Jones film I saw in a theater.
Okay. I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Nice. Let me ask you then, because I want to get to our 4 questions here. What is the first movie you remember seeing in the theater?
I believe it was E.T. 2 years prior to this. And I have vague memories of being terrified and probably a lot more memories of hiding in the seat or in my mother's lap than the movie itself. So maybe it's probably 50-50. But I saw E.T. It was wonderful and terrifying.
Yeah. It's scary. It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Incredible. Oh, man.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how scary it was until I showed it to my kids. Yes.
That movie's incredible.
That's
my second. My favorite film is Jaws, but E.T. is number 2. They're both in the same place, but they oscillate. E.T. is an incredible film.
Anthony, what's the last movie that you watched?
Paycheck?
I did my homework on this question.
Paycheck.
Watched.
I hope it is.
Oh, Temple of Doom count?
I'd like to say besides Temple of Doom, but yes, you could say that. But
that was the last movie I watched as well.
Yeah, I thought that was the given there.
Yesterday, yeah.
Jeez, I think it was Inside Out 2.
Okay.
What'd you think? It was fine.
It was good.
Yeah. Not as good as the first one, but it was fine.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah.
Did his thing. All right.
If I see Inside Out, if I see Inside Out 2 on streaming instead of theatrically, am I missing a grand experience, or will it perform just fine on streaming?
It's
okay.
Fine.
Yeah.
I took my kids. I had to see it theatrically with the kids.
That makes sense. That's cool though. It was a huge hit.
Yeah, I took my kids and my family to see it. They're all into their emotions. My oldest daughter very much relates to anxiety. So, what is your favorite movie if you had to say something right now today? And I know that's a hard question.
No, it's E.T.
Okay.
And I have a guilty pleasure favorite movie. The movie I've seen the most in my life is Better Off Dead.
Okay.
Nice.
So I've seen that hundreds of times. It's my guilty pleasure favorite movie, but E.T. is like my gun to my head.
So I have not seen Better Off Dead, but a couple of weeks ago we watched on the show. What's the director's name that did that? His follow-up
Steve
movie,
Holland. One Crazy Summer.
Yes, we watched. We watched One Crazy Summer. His follow-up movie.
It was pretty fun.
What did you think of that? If you have seen it,
I love it.
Yeah.
But Better Off Dead is a notch above. But there's so much in common between the two. Different characters, same tone, same everything.
Yeah.
But both very good. A crazy plot parallels between One Crazy Summer and Summer Rental, the John Candy classic.
I've heard that.
Yeah, they're both very. That'd be a great double feature.
All right, cool, very cool. Anthony, what is a movie that you credit for turning you into a cinephile?
I would say more so than a cinephile, but that made me want to make movies would be Pulp Fiction. I saw Pulp Fiction 6 times in the theater. It revolutionized the way I looked at movies. I started thinking more about directors when that came out. And it's the movie that brought me into the movie world. If it being more than just something to do on a Friday or Saturday night, it became its own slice of life. So
yeah. All right. Great answers. Okay. All right. So thank you. All right. So let's get into our discussion of Indiana Jones. I have a plot synopsis here. Intrepid archaeologist Indiana Jones, on the trail of fortune and glory in old Shanghai, is ricocheted into a dangerous adventure in India with his faithful companion Short Round and nightclub singer Willie Scott. Indy goes in search of the magical Sankara stone and uncovers an ancient evil which threatens all who come into contact with it. And if for our people who can watch our podcast, and he has his Sankara stone. Thank you. Great prop there. And I will just play a little bit of the trailer.
If adventure has a name, it must be Indiana Jones.
Dr. Jones found Noachi for me, and he's going to deliver him now.
Say, who is this nerd? Hachi!
Put the gun away, Sonny.
You have boy! This is fun!
Nothing shocks me. I'm a scientist.
And what sort of research would you do on me?
Nocturnal activities.
What position I like to sleep in?
Mating customs.
So you're an authority in that area?
Years of field work.
All right, little clip from the trailer. And Sam, you got some movie facts for us?
Indeed I do, Nathan. Indeed I do. So let's see. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I think at one point it was called Temple of Death, and they actually changed that. It's a 1984 American action-adventure film directed by Steven Spielberg from a script by Willard Huck and Gloria Katz, who actually worked with Lucas on American Graffiti. The original screenwriter Lawrence Kasdan actually turned this film down, and I don't know the story behind that. Maybe he found the material too dark, or it wasn't interested, or it was a schedule thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Too dark.
All the above. All the above.
All of the above. Douglas Slocum is returning as a cinematographer, edited, of course, by Spielberg's multiple times collaborator, Michael Kahn. Music by John Williams, and I must say personally, I love his score in this movie. This came out on May 23rd, 1984 in the United States. Its budget was $28 million, just over $28 million, and it grossed $333 million worldwide, so definitely a success. This actually, Lucas did not want to deal with Nazis again in the second story, and so it was his idea to make this a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark rather than a sequel. So this takes place a year before the events in Raiders. And let's see now. PG-13 was created after this movie. If you can believe it, this movie was rated PG, which is hilarious to me because this movie is a hard PG-13 in modern times, like hard PG-13. And
so speaking of that, since you brought that up, anyone here know what the first PG-13 movie was?
I did
do.
this morning and I've already forgotten
Okay.
it. What is it, Anthony?
Sam?
I do not know off the top of my head, actually.
The Patrick Swayze film, Red Dawn?
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is a entertaining, slightly bizarre film. It's like that movie is like a right winger's dream. It's like guns, we're fighting Russians in the mountains, and like we're out on our own building fires. Anyway, off topic. But so to wrap it up, so Lawrence Kasdan was out this time. PG-13 was created because of the movie. We just discussed that. And actually, one thing I found interesting was in the editing process, Spielberg, when they watched the original cut, they thought it was too fast and too short. So Spielberg went and added 3 minutes in to slow the picture down a little bit, which I will definitely discuss in my review because I love the breakneck speed of this movie, just the way it moves. I love it. But any other facts? That's the gist of what I got. I could keep reading.
I think it's also worth mentioning that in the middle of this filming, Harrison Ford he injured his back, and a lot of this movie is shot with a stunt double. And I think it's I think it's really noticeable, and I think it really threw off the shooting schedule for this, and it feels like more chaotic because of that.
He was out for, I think, 3 to 6 weeks, had this controversial new style operation performed on the like herniated
papaya
disc in his back.
enzymes.
Yeah, papaya enzyme. The stunt guy, Vic Armstrong, they were gone. He was gone for about, I think, 3+ weeks. And so it was in the third act scene where he's fighting the bad guy on the conveyor belt that goes into the wheel. Yeah. Most of it's done in wide shots. In fact, when Kate Capshaw hands Indy, she's like, here, hit him with this. That's totally the stunt, man. It's wide. You can't see his face. And they went back. They got inserts of Harrison Ford. But the most glaring part that I'll mention really quickly is when Indy is first imprisoned with Ke Huy Quan, and they're like in that kind of like human cage, like floating up in the thing. When Short Round runs up to give Indy a hug, it's like an over-the-shoulder shot, and you can see the guy, the back of his head and neck. It is not Harrison Ford at all. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It does not hurt the scene, but I'm just like, nope, that is not him.
Yeah. Yep.
Speaking of that duo, if you had told me that in the year 2024 to put money on which one of them would have an Academy Award, my money would not have been on Short Round.
Amazing. Yeah. Unbelievable. This is in Ke Huy Quan in his feature debut, his first film, Temple of Doom, which I love. Yep. His intro is incredible, by the way, when he just shows up in the car. Like when I was a kid, I was like, he was the coolest. I like looked up to him. I was like, wow, he's going on an adventure with Dr. Jones. This is awesome.
I was just finally excited that my small boy prophecy was right.
Oh yeah.
What's the small boy prophecy?
Anthony, I had made a list last week because not only have I never seen the Indiana Jones movies, I managed to go my entire life with 0 spoilers to the Indiana Jones movies. Wow. So I wrote a small list of what I thought were in them. And I was convinced, I was like, I swore there was some like Karate Kid, small child protege situation, and I was like dumbfounded in Raiders when there was no children.
Specifically, this franchise included whips and small boys. I remember.
Yeah, it did. Yeah,
that came up. Yeah,
and it does. And a funky hat.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention briefly, in Spielberg has said in many interviews that this is I think of just referring to the original trilogy, his least favorite of his own indie films that he directed. And it's interesting that he had a comment in terms of the tone and the darkness, and both he and Lucas were going through either marital or relationship problems at the time, breakups. And to quote Spielberg talking about the tone of Temple of Doom, we went too far, we out-poltered Poltergeist. Yes. Which I love that. I love that quote. Yeah.
Yeah, they were both in very dark places.
Yeah.
Did he say that it was his least favorite of the original trilogy? Wait, did he say this post 2009 or
previous 2009? I think he said it after, but he doesn't really talk about Crystal Skull because maybe he's
curious.
I just want to throw in a few things about some of the awards and box office here. So this came out on May 23rd, 1984, went wide then. Debuted at number 1 in the box office, made $25 million that week. Number 2 that week was The Natural, made $6.9 million in its third week of release. Number 3 was Breakin'. Remember Breakin'?
I remember Breakin'.
$4.1 million in its fourth week of release. Number 4, and I think this is cool because this movie is actually really a ripoff of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and this is Romancing the Stone, was number 4 that week in its 9th week of release. $4 million. I love Romancing the Stone.
I love Romancing the Stone as well. That movie's awesome.
Yeah. Number 5 this week was 16 Candles, $2.9 million. Number 6 was Police Academy, $2.8 million. Number 7 was Firestarter, $2.4 million. Number 8 was Splash in its 12th week of release, $2.1 million. Number 9 was Footloose in its 15th week of release, $1.9 million.
Boy.
I know. And number 10, movie I really love, I know you do, I think it's too, Sam, we've talked about this, Greystoke, Legend of Tarzan. Have we talked about this?
Wow.
I don't think I've seen that movie.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking something else.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm thinking something else. But I really do like that movie. I saw that in the theater as well.
The box office has changed so much.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
The quantity. There's so many films out now. So it's
this
crazy.
movie had 2 Academy Award nominations. It won for Best Visual Effects, which I scratched my head about. I wonder what it was up against. But it was also nominated for Best Original Score. And yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's get into this. B, since you have never seen this film before and you're
No, never.
the virgin to this franchise. Let's hear it.
Sure. I didn't live up to Raiders for me. I think we can say that. Raiders was a perfect movie, I thought. And this just felt like we really fell off the wagon somewhere. I thought it was fun. Hey, listen, this is just a fun action serial. You have this like serialized James Bondy kind of character who just goes from adventure to adventure. And the best parts of that are great. And the bad parts of that are really highlighted in this movie. I'll start, I think, some of the really fun stuff. I thought the action was shot really well in this. I thought it was photographed beautifully and some really big action scenes that were just fun. The kills were crazy. And I liked how dark this movie was. It wasn't a problem for me. I thought that was cool. Some of the dark parts of Raiders I thought were the most interesting and the most toothy, and it gave some weight to some of these really amazing kills. I liked the sidekicks. I loved Short Round, and I liked Willie too. She's crazy and annoying, but what a great everyman to throw in the middle of there, because what Indy's doing is crazy. That's insane. Who would know how to handle that situation? So I like that they went in completely the opposite
you're
direction.
Officially on the record being pro Willie.
I'm pro Willie. It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. I just like that they didn't try to give us the same woman twice. Does their romance make any sense? No. Do I think it makes sense to hold that to a really rigorous standard for an 80s action movie that's not about that? Also, no. Who cares? That's not the point of it for me. So, I thought that stuff, I thought the score was amazing. I was happy to be listening to John Williams again. The problem with characters like this is when you stick them in locations that you treat as exotic as this, and the white savior trope that really jumps out. And it's right from the opening number all the way through. The Indian people in this movie they're either helpless or evil the whole time. They need Indy to save them, that's this type of character, right? They go in somewhere and they save everything. And that's just the nature of it. It doesn't age well. It doesn't hold up super well. But some of it was problematic. But there was a lot of fun to be had in it. I do think it's interesting that you were saying the pacing was so great. I thought it really dragged. We spent so much time in the temple. And in Raiders, we were moving from incredible set piece to incredible set piece to different countries. And it just felt like the movie had pace and scope and exploration. And this felt really narrow to me. It was cool. The temple was interesting. There were a lot of dimensions to it, but we never really saw anything outside of that world. It ends really abruptly for me. So I thought the middle kind of sank. I don't know. It wasn't my favorite. I want to see the next one.
Okay. What would you give this as a rating, 1 to 5?
3.
3. It's a 3. Okay.
Yeah. So that was probably not very coherent.
No. Okay. All right. Anthony, you're up.
I love Temple of Doom. Of course. I just remember being like eyes bugging out of my head in the theater watching this as a child and watching a grown man's beating heart be ripped from his chest. This is a horror movie. This is a horror.
It's so disturbing.
Yeah.
There's so many elements to this that put it in the horror genre for me. And especially to a child, like it's never get away with that today. And even back then, again, it caused an entire rating system change. And I think they just the creators were in a dark place. They went in a dark place. Empire was such a big hit, and that was the dark middle Star Wars movie. And they wanted to do that again a little bit. And whether or not they went too far, who knows? But for me, it was a ton of fun. Some good callbacks to the first film. But I think even as a standalone film, this doesn't have to be an Indiana Jones movie. I think this movie could have been any other film. It wouldn't be as good because, again, you get to build on what Raiders has already established as a world and Indiana Jones as a character. But this would be a really fun movie to watch in almost any franchise. So, like, you can nitpick a bunch of different stuff in comparison to the other indie films or whatever, but I think it's right up there with the other films. Raiders, yeah, like you said, Raiders is perfect, and I guess we're not really allowed to talk about the future, but it's there. It's my third favorite of the original three, but we're talking like, what's your third favorite child? It's
Okay. Anthony, if you were giving a rating 1 to 5, what would you say? Because that's what we do here.
And we took all the movies ever made into this 1 to 5.
Yeah. It's high stakes, Anthony.
Yeah.
Let's go.
4. It's a 4. And
It's a 4.
I'm also Team Willie.
Hell yeah.
I think she's a terrific representative of, they're making these 30s and 40s serial films, and she's a great representation of what a lot of the like damsel in distress, she's not even really in distress. She's, like you said, you called her the everyman of it. She's comic relief. She's all these things. And I don't know, I've met people like that. I know people that if you drop them into that situation are going to scream when they see snakes and all that. It might even be me. But I didn't have a problem with her as a character. She was annoying. It's the person you don't want around in some of those situations, but that's what she's supposed to be there for. If she was like an equal to Indy as far as his experience and skill set and all that, she really wouldn't be that interesting of a character. You need someone that's like in some ways holding back. And then she's the character arc that they can't give Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is a very established character. It is not going to change much through these films, but the people around him through his adventures change their life perspective and all that. So you get to watch a great change in her. And so she's the character change. The character arc.
See a change? Did you see a change in her through this movie?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially
she was constantly pushing herself outside her comfort zone. She was taken from a place where she already had established herself in a foreign country. She built a career there. She knew she could be a person that kept going beyond her boundaries. I think she's a really well-written character.
And when Indy drank the potion there and turned evil, that's a big turning point for her. She stepped up. And like you mentioned earlier, when she handed the thing for him to hit, that wouldn't have happened in the beginning of the movie. I think she spending that time around Indy, becoming more comfortable in her skin, she really stepped up against those. She could have crouched in a corner and hid and cried, but she stepped up and helped fight.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about Indy drinking that potion. You talk about the horror movie like tone to this. That is so dark when he wakes up with the candles. I'm like, oh my God, this is pitch black midnight darkness.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
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 Okay.
And as far as the other tropes that people get upset about with India and all that, like, again, it's the early 80s. All these films and stories from, especially the stuff they're trying to emulate. They're trying to emulate stuff from almost
it's really the 30s.
Yes. Yeah. And exotic places and aboriginals and all this different stuff that comes up. Those are all like scary. The unknown. When man is scared of the unknown, and other countries and other populations and all that are unknown and therefore scary. And you get these tall tales that creep through about, oh, don't go there. Those people will do this and that. And we hear about now.
I just wish they had given Indy a really strong character from the village that he was trying to save. I wish there were somebody that stepped up that represented the place that needed help. That was, I think, the thing that could have helped it a little more. Because then you could still be this person who's fish out of water. You could still have that story. But then you also have the story of humanizing. But to your point, Indy has that great moment in the beginning with Willie where he's, you got to eat this food. And he's showing the cultural competence that an academic should have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Sam, what do you got to say?
First off, just going linearly, I love the opening title credits of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom behind Kate Capshaw, who is like in front of it. And the logo appears as it does on posters, which I will not give anything away, but we don't often see that style in other films.
With capshot in front of the title, you mean?
Yeah, no, where you actually see where it says Indiana Jones in the Indiana Jones orange font. Like Raiders doesn't have that. Yeah. Just different style. Like this movie's more pulpy.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I love and I was timed it because I've seen this movie so many times. I was curious as to the structure. The first 19 minutes of this film with the like Nurhachi's remains at Club Obi-Wan, the huge shootout in Club Obi-Wan, the escape, jumping out the window, the giant rolling like block, the car chase, Dan Aykroyd's brief cameo out of nowhere where he just shows up. He's, hello, I'm Odd Webber, blah, 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 blah. You will be riding on a cargo plane.
I was like, is that Dan Aykroyd?
They must have stayed friends from 1941 is what I'm guessing. You know?
Yeah, exactly. No, for sure. And then like all that is in the first 19 minutes. Then they jump out of the plane in that ridiculous raft sequence that I love. It's just like this movie really takes the kind of James Bondian premise of we'll open the film with the third act of another story. Yeah. And it just has this totally unrelated, like those characters never come back again. And in terms of what I really enjoy about this movie, the tonality of it, it's like my description of it, it on the outside it looks like a beautiful like cake and you like want to eat it, but like it's hollow and there's a giant tarantula inside. Because this movie, having always loved having always loved like movies and like being interested in directing and structure and stuff like that. What I really love about Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is if you're seeing this for the first time, it starts off very splashy with a musical, very light. Like you have a sense like what I'm going to be seeing is a lot of fun, maybe not as deep as Raiders. But after they crash and they arrive in India, this like oppressive tone of darkness just creeps down on the movie. And so I love how the evil and the tonality and the horror elements of this film are saved for the second act. And it creeps in insidiously. Interestingly enough, the actor who played the village priest, he actually did not speak English in real life. And Spielberg told him his lines phonetically to him, so he'd mimic the sound. So that's where he would say, "It must darkness over the village." He's literally just going off Spielberg's direction. Yeah, I thought he did amazingly well.
There's a great behind the scenes stuff on YouTube and on the disc where he just shows him that he's doing all the stuff behind like darkness and all that, and he's just copying him off camera.
Exactly.
Before you get too far, I do just want to comment on the opening, which could be its own short film in and of itself.
Oh, totally.
But I love the fact how Indiana Jones, especially in the beginning of Raiders 2, that they just drop you in without any unnecessary exposition of what's happening. They just don't insult the audience intelligence and allow you to pick up some of the pieces there. And it makes you have to listen and pay attention. It draws you in. They didn't need to explain too much, but you're gathering context clues of who's doing what and who's looking how and who's with who. And it's just phenomenal that they give that to the audience, the gift of filling in the gaps, which gets you more intertwined with the film. But anyway, that I love that they do that with these films, and I wish more films nowadays would do that without over-explaining everything.
Yeah.
Oh God, over explaining everything and then like adding subplots in addition to explaining everything.
Yeah.
They're like, we have to like check every single box. Whereas,
that opening is perfect.
I love that opening, and that sets the tone. And what I love about it is it's so different from the rest. And I totally hear what you're saying, B, about, especially when they're in the Temple of Doom, the movie is more like claustrophobic. It's closer in. It's a very different animal than Raiders, because Raiders is undeniably way more epic and grander visually. And it's, open skies and deserts and vehicles and soldiers. Like it's very, there's like a David Lean feel to
moves.
Raiders. This is a subterranean horror movie that happens to have some like outdoor locations in the first half. I know what you mean about the pacing in the temple, but for me personally, the reason I like it a lot is because when they get to the temple, the movie's had some action and laughs and the gross out dinner scene and some really good set pieces. And I love the thing with the spikes coming down and them getting trapped. Like the action in this movie is legit, but until they've arrived at the temple, it's never gotten fully dark. And when they get there and they get trapped, it gets dark. Like Harrison Ford drinks the poison, like they're being whipped, like Willie is literally about to be sacrificed to the fire. And that's like incredibly suspenseful and just horrifying, because I can't imagine her terror and just blacking out in the heat. But it gets so oppressive and so heavy that when they break free and escape, I find the like minecart chase wildly exciting. The bridge climax, just like, it's like they get let out of the prison of the Temple of Doom and they get this escape. Like the last third of that movie to me is just action packed. I love everything. I like the shot. I love it when Indy is swinging on the rafters with his whip and he's trying to catch up to the minecart and he falls in. Just the way it's shot, this movie really, the pacing moves really fast for me. And lastly, I'll just end by saying that in mythology, in the hero's journey and those types of things, there's the idea of the hero has to go into the earth and be tested, and then they come back out to the light re-energized. And I feel like Temple of Doom takes that literally. We literally see a movie where Indiana Jones and company go to hell, survive hell, and then break up back forth to daylight on the other side. And it was like a fever dream nightmare of a story. So that's what I like about it. I could go on and on, but I would give Temple of Doom 4 as well. I give it a solid 4.
Nice.
Okay, I'm up.
Sam, man, you're
Sam,
up.
I've dreaded this day. I have. Anthony, what you don't know is that I have a real love-hate relationship with this movie for a long time. So one thing that I feel like I should never do, I never want to do in life, is to look at this film with a critical eye, especially when I'm already, this film has been skating at the ice for a while now. This came out at a time at the peak of my 80s movie fandom, summer of 84. I was 10 and I loved the hell out of this movie when I was 10. Spielberg made this movie for me. It was perfect. And I still think, like you said, Sam, the first 18, 19 minutes of this movie are perfect, pretty much. I love that opening scene. I would actually, I'll be honest, I wish this movie was about Indy's adventures with the Chinese mafia. I could have stayed in Shanghai and learning about Lao Che and his adventures there. I want to know more about that.
How funny was it when he got on the freight plane? Lao Che's.
I'm going to get into it. Yeah. I love that scene, but there's one thing that bothers me though, and I'll get into about the humor in this movie, in the writing of this, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. But as the years have gone on, Temple of Doom has increasingly become a very difficult viewing experience for me. I guess I'll say I'm not here to completely trash this movie. There are a lot of things I'll praise. Like I said, the opening's perfect. It starts off with that vibrant homage to the like Busby Berkeley musicals from the 30s, 40s, that splashy dance number. I love that opening set piece. It's my favorite part of this movie. Pitting Indy, Lao Che against each other, the interaction combined with the blocking of that, the directing, the editing, the score while they're doing the Lazy Susan back and forth. So it's chef's kiss. It is.
The champagne pork, the ice with
everything. The way that is edited together, it's just perfection. But it leads to that like Marx Brothers-esque shenanigans. And it's a great blend of humor and action. It is Spielberg firing in all cylinders in that scene. And I really do love it. But it's also an indication of the type of humor and kind of like the ventures into lowbrow territory that is just not vibing with me the way it used to. And it's lacking kind of the wit and the subtlety of the first film. But not going to get into the doldrums yet. Another bright spot I like is the dynamic between Indy and Short Round. Their banter and chemistry, so much fun. I really hope that Huey Kwan maybe returns this franchise at some point and we get maybe some adventure with him or that character. I think would be really cool. I think his I don't think he ever will.
I love it when he and Indy are playing. They're playing cards, and Kate Capshaw's running around and like bumping into every single animal, and she grabs the bat. And favorite shot is she runs by, and the lizard is.
I like them in that. I love their banter. I could watch them play cards or do whatever. I want to adventure with them. But if it was focused, but conversely, Willie Scott, the leading lady, for me, the leading lady is a major drawback for me. Her character, I'm actually surprised how much Team Willie there is here, because I find her she is the audience surrogate, but damn, the character, I don't know, I found her to be very underdeveloped. And you did bring up some good points that did make me think a little bit more. She does have some agency in this toward the end where she is helping Indy out, and I really didn't think about it as much, but she is so poorly written. The stuff that comes out of her mouth, it's just eeks and ahs for the most part. And I don't even care that she's like this potentially outdated stereotype of nightclub singer of the 30s. I get that's somebody that existed back then. And so I don't fault the movie for that. I just don't like the fact that I didn't feel like she had much arc and has really no depth. She has no character moments. Yes, she does action as character, but we don't really get to know her. She doesn't share anything about who she is throughout this movie. There's one moment where she says something about she has an opinion about my father, my uncle was a magician or a trickster or something like that, and he ended up like penniless. That's the one time in this whole movie she says something that is, she's bringing up something from her past.
It speaks to her material nature, though, doesn't it? It helps explain sort of her superficiality.
Yes. But it's the only time that she says anything that makes me think that they wrote a line for her thinking about her character. There's no other line in this movie that adds any character to her.
I think there's so much visual storytelling that tells you her character. I think that she's okay. Sorry, I didn't interrupt you, but yeah, no,
I get it. You've made me think a little bit more about it that was my initial reaction to this.
Fair. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
All right, my question to you is, if you're going to take the uber capable and experienced Indiana Jones and drop him into what Sam calls the pit of hell, we don't have the traditional jet setting like the 007 jet setting that Indiana Jones does. We dropped him off in a place that no one knows where he is. He's trapped. There's no way out, and he's alone. If you're going to do that to Indiana Jones and you want it to seem a very helpless situation, are you not going to drop him with a child and a woman that's more worried about breaking a nail than anything else? The two of the most helpless people that you can companion him with in the pit of hell. And they are the ones that help him get out.
I get it. I understand this movie has a very precise formula for that. She's a Bond girl is what she is. There's the reason for why she's there. And she's the audience surrogate. And I don't fault the movie completely. I just fault the writing for her. But she serves a purpose for the story.
She's a broad in distress.
But I don't know. It just is not working for me anymore.
I think a lot of people feel the way you feel.
Yeah. So the other thing I know, but I can only talk so much about it. The other thing, just two more points. I'll say quickly. Visually, this film it's so heavily reliant on sound stages, and that is also contributing to this claustrophobic and dark atmosphere. I know this movie is underground and all that, but whereas Raiders was so set in these vibrant location-based settings, much of this film takes place underground, and with that it's got that dim lighting and these visually monotonous. It creates this visually monotonous experience, is what I'm trying to say, and with so many few outdoor scenes, and a few of them were shot in Sri Lanka, but it really doesn't offer that much relief. So it just felt really. I felt just like it was all on sound stages, and I just did not feel like we went anywhere. I did not like it. You mentioned David Lean as a great reference, Sam, for the first film. And I felt like I never really was outside this movie, and it wasn't pleasurable.
Are you hating this compared to Raiders, or are you hating this as a standalone thing? Like, do you think that Raiders of the Lost Ark is causing you to hate this more than you should?
I can't not compare it to Raiders, but I think it's also, it felt cheap because of that.
It did felt like Power Rangers-y.
And there's more to say about this, but in summary, there's a lot of great moments. The action is so well directed in this, and brilliant. A lot of moments of brilliance and nostalgia here, but it really struggles with the tonal inconsistencies. I don't like the slapstick humor. It may have been the film that the public wanted in 1984. And hey, I was there for it. But in retrospect, I still think this is one of Spielberg's worst in his catalog. So, yeah.
What's your star rating?
I'm giving it a 2.5.
Damn.
I'd say for me personally, just on the visual element of the Temple of Doom, I love Douglas Slocum's lighting there. I think that set is incredible. I was doing this at the 1 hour mark when Indy and Short Round and Willie, they can hear chanting and they're walking through these stalactites and stuff, and they come out around this corner, and in this Spielberg tracking shot, you're just following them, and then it pans around and you see the entire Temple of Doom set all fiery, lit up with all the extras. I just find that all of that, the light, everything I find spectacular. So I don't find it visually not.
This movie is between spectacular and aggravating to me. That's where I'm at.
I have a question for you guys about the way this looks and about some of the action and the set pieces, because I think the action is shot really well, but it goes so big so often and so much bigger than it went in Raiders that for me it almost looks lampoony, like when they get out of the plane on the raft, and to an extent the minecart scene as well. So I didn't see this when it came out. Obviously, I haven't seen it my whole life. So all I've seen is what it's influenced. And I haven't really done a lot of research on this movie because I don't want to spoil anything for myself for future films. It looked like to me, with present day eyes on this movie, like they were gunning for Universal rides when they made this movie. They had studio notes in the back of their mind of like, how do we make this a ride? How do we market this? That's how I, as a modern day movie watcher, see what they're doing there. But I don't know if this is actually just Spielberg and Lucas being like, let's all be 10-year-old boys and make the movie our 10-year-old kids wish they can make. Or if this was a studio note saying Raiders was so good, let's just do more.
As far as I know, go ahead, Sam.
The minecart chase was actually originally going to be part of Raiders, but they had too many set pieces. Okay. So they they're like, oh, now we're in Temple of Doom, we're underground, we'll take the minecart chase, put it in this one. But I can see possibly. Yeah. No, really? The raft, I can see possibly while making it, it definitely has that. Of course it could be a good ride.
I know there was very little studio involvement in the making of this movie. They let Lucas and Spielberg really have carte blanche.
Because to me,
do whatever you want.
This looks like the studio had their hands all over it. If you've never seen this movie,
this feels like this to me feels like a cocaine-infused fever dream.
Yeah, but I think the studio execs were doing that too. But I think so I grew up in the era of franchises and sequels and big movies and studios and things. So watching this now, it's so hard to think that this was the original concept of Spielberg and Lucas, and not how do we market this later? How do we make things bigger? And it just not being super successful. So I don't know, that just puts it in a different light for me.
I hear that, and it was definitely them. I mean, it was Lucas pushing the idea, and Spielberg kind of jumped on board and was like, "Oh, a darker."
Just story. Playing and being.
Well, I think the important thing to note is that this really was like a story that they just threw together. This is not like Raiders where Lucas had this idea gestating for years and years. This was just like them. We got to think of something, and they had action set pieces in mind, and then I feel like they cobbled around a story around that.
They did the same thing.
Fine for the kind of serial that it is. Sorry,
they did the same thing with Raiders. They put together a story, and this was no different than their kind of storytelling. I think it just happened to be, for me, I think Raiders is definitely a lot more open-aired and visually epic. But what I love about this is and I won't give anything away, but when you're watching Indiana Jones movies, I like what an outlier this film is. It's so different in feel that it the claustrophobia and the cave, like for me, gives it its own horror thing. And I love it when they're like going through the place with the bugs. Like it's very like trapped and cavernous, but I love it because it's so different. It's not like Raiders Part 2. Let's try to top the truck chase. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's just my sort of angle.
It's a little mean spirited. Like it never lets them go. Like first they got the bridge, then there's alligators under the bridge. Then it's just, and I like that. I think that works, but I wasn't sure who was driving that.
That was definitely Spielberg and Lucas.
Okay.
Yeah.
The great thing too, Sam, you're talking about the end when they come out and they're in darkness and then into the light at the end, was sitting in the theater having that same response when the screen goes bright with the sun. And we've been living inside with these characters for this entire film. I remember squinting when the daylight came on at the end of the film and just being like,
man, that's awesome.
And having that same feeling. So
that's cool.
I think some of the negatives that people are finding are by design, and maybe they're not what is optimal for us and stuff. But Willie's a character you're not supposed to like, I don't think. And, living in the darkness, I think, is by design as well. But it's interesting what you're saying, B, about like the set pieces and the age nature of the effects. Like I was remarkably still impressed by all the set pieces and stuff. But I think I just... in a different generation, grew up with a different eye. I hate more of the artificial CGI stuff now than I do. I think less of that than I do the sort of cheaper miniature stuff and whatnot. And maybe because I grew up on it, it doesn't bother me as much because I'm so used to it. Whereas someone that didn't grow up with the miniatures and the practical sets as much, it stands out more to you because you're used to a more modern image.
I ride for practical effects. That is my jam. I just thought they just kept pushing the action so big in scope, and it was just so relentless to the characters that to me it just felt like, okay, we've had Indy in a truck chase. What if we kick him out of a plane? That just felt to me like a studio note trying to push the limits of what the character could do. But I thought the effects were great. I thought the CGI didn't hold up, but the practical effects looked amazing. And I think the sets are the best part of both movies.
I do agree. I do know what you're saying about the tone. This movie has a kind of let's punch you in the face tone to it. It's like you want to see the heart and the fire. It's like ruthless. Like there is that, and that's what makes it so different. Because yes, it's darker than Raiders, but the evil of the Nazis is like a deeper, just more human evil of horror that like Raiders is grander. So it's like Temple of Doom definitely feels smaller, but I feel like the dark horror tone like compensates for the more like enclosed story.
You with Nazis, you're coming in knowing what the Nazis are capable of and what they're doing, and they're already historically scary. But the Thuggies, you don't know anything about them coming in, so it's how do we make them almost scarier than the Nazis? What can we do? So I feel like they had to make them really bad to live up to Nazis, which they didn't have to show us what the Nazis do because we all learned about it in school.
They are ruthless. And by the way, I've just forgot to include this. You guys will find this hilarious, but no joke. I timed it at the 1 hour, 24-minute mark and 33 seconds. There is the weirdest like continuity edit where like Indy has just rescued Willie and Mola Ram is still like on the stage and Indy goes to hit him. And then this floor panel opens up and Mola Ram just escapes and he just goes, wah, and he disappears.
Very Bond villain-esque.
Yeah, if you ever watch that in slow motion, the continuity on that shot is a mess. Like they tried to hide it in the editing, but it looks insane. Yeah.
I want to emphasize just a little bit. I feel like hung up on my gripes with Willie and some of the other things here, but the thing that really I as my hang up is really the writing and some of the tone of the way these characters are written and the way they're speaking in here. The comedy in this. I was not a fan of the slapstickiness of this. I thought the humor, again, I'm going back to comparing, and I know you're calling me out on that, Anthony, a little bit, but I think Raiders of the Lost Ark, the humor in that is wonderful. And there's like in Temple of Doom, like a moment I do love where I think that it fits the humor, the tone from Raiders of the Lost Ark is when he's escaping on the plane in the beginning, and he shouts out to Lao Che, "Nice try, Lao Che." He closes the door, and the Lao Che name is revealed on the plane. And if it ended right there, it's a great moment. But what I don't like what this movie does, what Spielberg does to hit us over the head, is that you see the reverse shot of Lao Che like signaling to the pilots, and you see that shot, and then the pilots signal back. He's like doing everything he can to constantly hand feed the humor to us in this. And it's little things like that. And of course, there's a lot more slapstick on top of that. But I feel like no moment can be left to be just funny on its own. And there was another moment, like going back to Raiders, there was a great line, and I actually wrote it down here. I don't know where it is anymore, but it's just the way that I know what it was. Another example is that when Indy and Willie, they fall out of the club and they land in Short Round's car, and he's reaching into the dress, and I just don't like lowbrow humor. There's no time for love, Mr. Dr. Jones, or things like that. I feel like that line would not exist in Raiders of the Lost Ark. But I compare that to like in Raiders, where Marion says lines like, "You're not the man I knew 10 years ago." And Indy would reply with things like, "It's not the years, honey, it's the mileage," which I find to be like subtle humor that I love that tone. And that's what I miss for this movie, is that
I'll give you that.
Really suave, but it's great writing. It's great
You also
writing.
maybe talking too about Willard Hyuk and Gloria Katz. The writers on this are different. That
I know.
Well, that's gotta be. That's probably
yes. Well, this is what I'm talking
about.
I
noticed that a little bit. Like it's not there. Some of that is not the.
But it stands out to me. It stands out to me so much. These moments in this movie, and I'm like, oh.
I hear you there. It's the one where Lao Che like signals to the pilots. That didn't stand out as like a comedy overdone. I just thought it was an action beat of like, all right, you guys take charge.
But this is like, why would okay? I know this is the most nitpickiest nitpick of the nitpicks is things like that. I get that, but it's just like this. That's something that like Spielberg. Like, why would he need that shot? It's things like that. But I get it. This is an 80s action movie. But it feels like this is something that we would see.
They can't all be Trouble in Little China.
I know. That is probably not the best example, but it is like a microcosm.
I think you and I have a similar... What I think this does really well, and it does it in Raiders too, is when it just relies on the visual storytelling. Willie losing the diamond, and then the ice comes in and she's got to scramble to find it. That's a great moment that tells you everything you need to know. Her being poked and held at knife point in that opening scene tells you Indy isn't a great guy all the time. We knew that from Raiders. He's a complicated character. I love that. The shadows come back in some of the action beats, and some of the action happens off screen. You just see the effects. That is so well done and incredible. Some of the verbal cues are a little more on the nose, and they don't always hit the same way that the visual storytelling does for me.
I hear you. I think the visual storytelling and for me, the action set pieces in this movie.
The action's great.
Are the strongest. They're like they
just go so far.
They're like the bones, the foundation that like holds the house together, because I love the minecart chase. I love the escape from the Temple of Doom. I feel like that third act is its own like fast-paced, rickety like adventure ride, like slipping.
I was just glad to be out of there by that point.
There's also character
like,
moments.
how much lava can it?
Indy is seeing a child being whipped. At one point, he throws a rock at that guy. What the hell? He totally forgot where he was. I mean, I just hate the fact that Indy is now in this movie like a brash, sometimes really stupid character. And he's supposed to be like this brilliant, able to think his way through problems. And in this case, he just throws a rock and he gets to get the attention of the entire thuggy cult.
I liked the throwing of the rock because I thought that was a very typically Indiana Jones moment where he just is like improvising and he's overcome by his emotion.
Right.
And he's like, how dare you do that to the kid? Like, I actually love that moment.
I feel like I'm watching a completely different character in this movie.
So, one way he's... Oh, go ahead, Anthony.
I was going to say that the thing you view as a flaw, I was complimenting in the fact that I love the anti-hero that is Indiana Jones, and that he's not always perfect, and he often makes mistakes that put himself in more peril, like anyone. I know really smart people that do really stupid emotional things sometimes. And so I love that there's that side of him. It makes him more three-dimensional. If he was perfect through everything and thought through everything and did everything by the letter, he'd be so fucking boring. But the fact that he does these things, you're like, no, oh no. But
I get it. But it just seems like we've betrayed a character that I already thought I knew. It just seems like something that the other thing I have to keep in mind is that this is a prequel, and maybe he learned from his mistakes, which is why he is different.
I think it's weird that they bother to classify it as a prequel because they're just serials.
Here's the other thing. When I saw this in 1984, I never really made the connection that this was a prequel. I think I'd only seen Raiders maybe one time because I did see it in the theater. By the way, I saw Raiders in 1981 in the theater. Scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And it was one of the first movies my dad brought me to see. I was 7 or whatever, how old I was. And I don't think I don't know if I had HBO or cable. So I saw, here's the other thing that's really funny. I didn't even know that Indiana Jones was the same actor that was Han Solo, because until I saw the opening scene at the nightclub when Indiana Jones is clean shaven. That's the only time I think in the entire series he's clean shaven. I'm like, he looks like Han Solo. And that's when I finally made the connection. There's the same actor. But that's the thing. Until these movies were on home video or on HBO, like when you see the year title card, like I never knew that. Or I don't think a lot of people made that connection.
He does something that's outside of what we assume his character to be from Raiders at the end of this movie for the better, I think, which is he gives the stone back to the people back to the village that needs it. Because Indy is an archaeologist, right? He's an academic, he's an archaeologist, and these movies are pretty morally ambivalent about the colonialism of archaeology and
is there ever a doubt he was going to return the stone if he got it?
No, but I think like the British-led Indian Armed Forces saved the day at the end of this movie. And I just think it's, the movie doesn't really care about those things or explore those themes at all, but it's the nature of Indiana Jones is that he goes into these places, he takes these idols, and then he brings them back to his European museums, his Western museums. However, whatever you think about that or feel about that's what he's doing. But he gives it back at the end of this, and he says, there'll be another day. And I just thought that was a nice character moment for him.
Speaking of the British, oh no, go ahead, Anthony.
Just to button that, in defense of Indy in this moment, most of the other artifacts has gone after to this point are ones by civilizations that aren't around anymore. There are other people going after them. The Ark of the Covenant and all that aren't using. But this, in a world where this sort of magic is real, and this tribe of folks, this village, is using these stones for a purpose for their crops and their world. So it's not that this stone is just something that people are trying to get for modern. It's
not
use.
A relic.
It's not a relic. It's a
that's a good
modern
point.
tool. So
that's a good point. Yeah.
And I totally hear it makes no attempt to analyze the time periods or but I do love the.
That's fine.
Speaking
Doesn't
of
have to.
British imperialism, Colonel or General Bloomberg, that British actor. Blumber. I do the end. John Williams is somewhat imperialistic, and like when the British show up at the very end, I love John Williams. He's like overjoyed. He's just shoot them yet they won. It's just like straightforward, like flat adventure, but that tonality, amusing wise. Like
I love the scores of both of these movies. I was jamming out on the ferry ride to work today.
I do love the score. I think my favorite musical cue in the whole movie is they're just leaving the village, and then the camera pushes in on the priest, and he's just standing there wishing them good luck. Then it cuts to this wide shot of them on the elephants crossing a river, and John Williams' theme just explodes until we're heading to Pankot Palace adventure mode. Amazing.
Who knew that the lead singer of Toto's dad was so talented?
I know.
Joe Williams' dad is just amazing.
It's true.
Is that something you knew, Nathan?
No, I didn't. I was trying to act smart and not say anything.
Well, you know so much about music. I figured that's one that I wouldn't be able to get you with.
That slipped by.
I only learned that a couple months ago, and I was blown away.
Anything else here I made a couple dumb notes here that you guys are going to shout at me. I think the entire mind chase at the end is great, but it's also unnecessary because they're told by the young Maharaja, you must take the tunnel on the left. No, they just had to go out the front door like all the other kids. I made that note.
The Maharaja reminded me of the ethereal being in the Never-Ending Story.
Maharaja is actually played by a girl.
Yeah.
Yep. And I have one other note here. We're probably going backwards here. I think, B, you mentioned this early in your review. After the dinner, Indy and Willie start this flirting. And what the hell? There's no sexual tension that's built up at all least I observed in this. And it
reminded me, have you seen the movie from the 50s, Pillow Talk?
No, but I know of it.
Hudson Dorset. It's the same kind of not so chemistry. Yeah, I was glad we got another mirror scene, a different kind of mirror scene. I thought that was fun. No, whatever. They're two horny hot adults in a palace.
Yeah, they're both stuck in a palace.
Yeah.
What are they going to do?
I got drugs for dinner. Give them a break.
But if there was just a kernel of sexual attention that was planted somewhere.
I love it because it tells neither of them are as attracted to other people as they are themselves. And Spielberg and Lucas just give them a mirror and that's it. It's perfect. I loved it.
I don't know, but if you're going to have them bickering for 30 minutes, you got to plant some seed.
It was not 30 minutes. It was like 6. I was like timing the movie last night. Like it's not 30 minutes. Yeah.
Maybe 6 minutes. That scene has got to be 30 minutes because it's right before they go into the temple.
No, women have actually been systemically
6 minutes, and then the other 15 minutes is the spikes and the bugs and like this whole set piece. Of
Nathan,
there.
you've never fallen into bed with someone that you yourself thought you couldn't stand until you're kissing. It happens. You think you
also they couldn't run out the front door. The minecart chase was necessary because of some reason they explained in the plot that I can't remember right now, but I'll get back to you on that one.
No, I'm glad the minecart chase is in this, but I think like why didn't they just go out the front? Why not? All the other kids could do it, but
I enjoyed the minecart chase, but there was some small itch in the back of my brain that was so cynical about the like merchandising of this film. I was like, oh, I'm probably setting up a ride. Universals.
By the way,
modern cinema's ruined you.
So have you not been to Disney's like Indiana Jones ride, B?
No.
Oh my God.
No,
it's not a minecart ride, but you're in like a Jeep and it's really cool.
0 encounters with Indiana Jones in my life, except for I knew we wore a hat.
You almost get hit by the boulder in the ride. Like you think you're going to, then you go like underneath it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Pretty good.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah.
Yep.
I got nothing else to say. The booby trap room is a great set piece also.
I love
Spielberg loves that set piece too. That's one of his favorite set pieces in the whole series. He does mention that. So
that was so gripping. Yeah.
Nathan, how did you feel about the comedy in that?
Oh, I thought that was funny. When he's come on, just pull the lever, and she's.
It's good.
Then when she bumps the thing and it resets everything again, like
the coda is the best part. No, I liked it.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that. It was really just the huge set pieces that went on for a long time and just kept. I think the plane and some of the minecart, I was just like, oh my God.
So B, just for clarification, are you with me and Sam or are you with Nathan?
There's no team.
I'm firmly in the middle. I'm a 3-star, man.
You just reminded me of the dwarf and the Hobbit, and they're like, "Will you have peace or will you have war?" And he's, "I will have."
No, I think where I'm different. I would watch this movie again, and I think going in knowing what it is, I would watch it when I'm in the mood for that type of movie. I think if I'm in the mood for a big adventure movie, no. if I'm in the mood for an action-y, big budget kind of movie, sure.
I'm just trying to sway you to our side because I want Nathan to go to bed tonight questioning his life choices, thinking he's made a mistake and that he should give this.
Anthony, you don't need to do anything for me to think that already. Okay.
Took some notes while I was watching this, and I just have a note that says the temple kills go so hard. They go so hard. And that's positive. I thought that was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, those kills are rough when the guy gets crushed by those boulders. I also like that they show what happens in the lava cage before they do it to Whitley.
Yes.
So you're like, oh shit. That's
I do love it when the guy like falls off the back of the mine or falls in the tracks and the other cart hits it and they go flying. To me, that was always like a womp bada womp, like woohoo!
It's fucking brutal, man. And the alligators, those alligators ate well that day. Oh.
And that bridge scene.
I love
that's where I was like, this is a lot.
The bridge was all real. That bridge was there. And Spielberg refused to walk across it because he was afraid he didn't want to do it. And Harrison Ford just ran across it. They built the bridge, like they got the local military to build it with all these supports, like it was the safest bridge ever. And then they detonated it with like wire cutting explosives, and they had dummies on the bridge that were mechanical that would like their heads would move, and so when they're falling off the bridge, that's why the people look real because they're like moving. But then when you see the making of the scenes and they all fall in the river, it's hilarious because the dummies are still turned on, so the fall should have killed them, and you just see them like flapping around in the water. Yeah. Like they can't turn them off.
I think about Mola Ram's fall afterwards, and
that didn't look great.
But you know what? I have to compare movies. But what if he had fallen like Hans Gruber does in Die Hard? Would that have been better if you saw the slow descent?
It would have been cool, but even though it totally looks fake, the fact that they have like a camera move in the fall, like following him. Yeah. Like usually in the 80s, they just have static matte shots where someone like recedes. And so I liked the effort. It's one of those things where it doesn't look real, but I applaud what they were like trying to do.
That happens to me a lot in movies. Yeah. That's more grace than I give it. Do you think there's so many relentless kills and so many long set pieces in this movie that it's a little underwhelming when the big baddie dies? It's just, it's like, all right, we had to it takes a minute.
I do love it when he bounces off that rock when he's falling and he flies out of the frame. I always like that. It's like the guy hitting the propeller in Titanic.
One thing I learned was the big dude that Indy fought was played by the same guy from the propeller plane in Raiders. Same actor.
Oh, no way.
I never knew that.
I didn't realize that also. That's Pat Roach, who played several characters. He plays the big thuggy in Temple of Doom, and he plays the guy that gets caught up in the fan as well.
So that was
a good one.
He's wearing some blackface.
That's where Harrison Ford, when he's like flipping him over his back, that's when he herniated his back in the middle of that action scene. Must have been painful.
Spielberg was known for casting multiple actors in a couple roles, because even in Raiders, the actor who, not Alfred Molina, but the other guy that they're on the expedition with in that movie, the guy that betrays him, that he turns around and whips the gun out of his hand. He is the guy that has the monkey on the chimpanzee on his shoulder. Same actor. He was cast.
You didn't have to clarify that it wasn't Alfred Molina, because when Alfred Molina comes on screen, I know. You're not fooling me.
But it's the other guy.
He's amazing.
I can see not recognizing Pat Roach at all, because like when he's in Temple, he has the turban and is completely covered up, and then in Raiders he's bald and he's like in the
And spoiler, Pat Roach is in Last Crusade, but a very small role. Their idea was for him to have a much bigger role in that movie, but it got cut out. But you'll see him.
Being Pat Roach, like this.
He's a Nazi. Yeah. Okay, I think we can take a break and we'll get to our vault decisions on this as soon as I pull this up here. All right, thanks everyone for joining our transmission. We truly appreciate you tuning in. Contrary to popular belief, we do like people. So Don't let the theme of the show lead you to believe that you're not welcome to share your thoughts and opinions on the films we are discussing. If you have seen Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, we would love for you to share your thoughts about it. So please drop us an email at backtotheframerate@gmail.com. We may even read it on the podcast. You can also share your thoughts and opinions of our show and films we discuss on our socials at Back to the Frame Rate. And if you're enjoying our show, please, we'd be very grateful if you take a moment and kindly review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to our show. We thank you all in advance. Okay, let's get to our verdict on this, our decision. So, B, is Temple of Doom a movie that needs to be saved into our vault, into the post-apocalyptic times, to be seen for the future generations? No.
Raiders, hell yeah.
Okay. Anthony, you get a vote. You're a guest. You always get a vote. I'm trying to tell our being Sam that, especially Sam here, because he likes to save everything because he thinks it's just like a big hard drive. It's not. It's 35 and 70 millimeter prints, and it's only like the size of this room. I'm trying to tell him. So we can only save so many movies.
No. No.
All right. No.
I can't believe I'm saying no, but if that's the scenario and that's the size,
it's high stakes, man.
It is. We can only save so many.
It's high stakes.
Okay. Sam?
I would save it because I like the variety, and I like the variety of Indiana Jones. And I know you're getting your gleeful, evil moment, Nathan. Enjoy it while it lasts, because you'll lose friends one day anyway.
Oh, God.
You smiling bastard.
What if I say yes, just for all the reasons I mentioned before? I have major issues with the tone and the writing of this movie, and I think there's much better films in this franchise, and we're going to be watching them. At least one more. So no, and 1 vote out of 4 does not cut the mustard. So never to be watched again by anyone.
I feel like I let Sam down.
No, you didn't, man. You just gave Nathan his. He's been looking forward to this. You gave him his evil moment where he's I
take no pleasure. I take no pleasure.
I see it in your eyes.
I take no pleasure.
Evil glee. No, I'm just kidding. Of course.
We saved the great outdoors, Sam. We
did.
have that.
Wait a minute.
I wasn't there for that episode. I want to be clear.
We just
I was out sick.
Doom, but save the great outdoors. I'm changing my vote.
There's plenty of room. But even if
it doesn't matter if you change your vote, Anthony. It's still not a majority.
Well, it's tied. It's a tie.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. It's a majority.
What
do you think we're going to take this to Harris? Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to take this to Florida for a hanging Chad? No, you're fine. It's a tie.
The great outdoors.
It was 2 people on that podcast.
Wow.
I want to reiterate
if you or B had shown up, I think it still may have gotten in.
Absolutely.
Sounds like you stacked the deck.
Yeah.
Fishing with the right bait.
Ernest Goes to Camp did not go in, even though I think Sam said yes.
I'm going to say no to every other Indiana Jones film now.
Okay.
It's just there's not enough space. Like you said, it's the size of the room. We're full already. If you go by that logic, there's no space.
Sam, are you crying? I see you wiping.
I'm weeping tears right now. Yeah. No, actually, my eyes are itching me.
Okay. All right.
Sam, I'm just allergic to your bullshit opinions. I'm so sorry.
Well, let's do a quick movie pairings. I have my bumper here.
Sir.
What?
Are either one of these any good?
I don't watch movies.
Have you heard anything about either one of them?
I find it's best to stay out of other people's affairs.
You mean you haven't heard anybody say anything about either one of these?
Nope.
What about these two?
Well, they suck.
All right, movie pairings this week. This is where each of us will pick a movie as a double feature with Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. This can go in any direction. You could do another action movie or another movie with Harrison Ford. It's wide open, whatever you want to do. Let's begin with B.
I changed mine at the last minute.
I'm watching you on the Google document. I'm
swooping in. I'm changing it because our conversation got me thinking. 1952. Gregory Peck, Ava Gardner travel to Kilimanjaro. The snows of Kilimanjaro, based on the Hemingway novel, way better than the Hemingway book, I think. Way less dark, anyway. No, I think it's great. It's beautiful to look at. It's wonderfully shot. But if you are into Indy for the adventure aspect, if you're into Indy for the sort of super spicy flash in a pan romances, if you're into Indy for the challenge of man versus nature and man versus his own demons, this is great. This ticks a lot of boxes for me. I might say it's the better movie of the two, but watch both. You decide. It's on VOD. It can be a little bit hard to find, but I watched it recently on Prime. I think I had to rent it for a couple bucks, but well worth.
I have never seen this, so
it's great.
All right. Wow. I want to see this. Great. Yeah. Sam, you got some, or Anthony, let's go to you, Anthony. You got something? You got, I think, a variety.
4. I do have 4. So I'll leave it to the
viewer. Pick one.
Right. Nathan can pick of the 4 then. I can't.
All right.
It's Gunga Din, which was an influence on Temple of Doom. So if you want to go to the DNA of Temple of Doom and bring one of the influences to it, Gunga Din, African Queen, The African Queen, Gremlins, or Poltergeist. Films that everyone thinks Steven Spielberg directed, and he did not, but he did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with, I don't know Gunga Din, but I know obviously the other.
It's a lot like Temple of Doom. Yeah.
All right. Great. Sam, what do you got?
Less horror-y and more actiony, but I would definitely, if you're came out the same year, if you're in the mood for another action 80s adventure with globetrotting and set pieces, and charismatic characters, I would recommend Romancing the Stone, Robert Zemeckis' film.
Hell yeah. And if you could time travel, you could do that actual double feature in the theater.
That's true. That is true.
You could have.
That would be fun.
And B, you still don't believe that Jewel of the Nile is a real movie?
What? No, that's some bullshit Sega game. Don't lie to me.
Jewel of the Nile is real. That's the sequel.
She doesn't believe us.
No, it's not. It's a Sega fever dream you had.
It's got a good set piece with an F-18 in it, or like they're stuck in some plane. Or something.
It does. Everything you're saying sounds like a movie that your characters in the movie are watching. It's not real.
It's not as good as the first one, but I'll give it that.
Do you know where Romancing the Stone might be streaming, or is it just on VOD now? Do you know?
I'm not sure. Let me check. Well, it looks like it would be on Amazon Prime.
All right. Cool. My movie pairing this week, I decided to pick a film that I feel that Spielberg and Lucas looked at as a major influence in this franchise, especially this film, probably Raiders as well. I'm going with The Mummy from 1932. There's several versions of the story that have been adapted to the screen. And I do like the Brendan Fraser film from the late 90s. This one is directed by Karl Freund. It's German. Thanks, Sam. Assuming that's you. He only directed a handful of films, but he was a trailblazing cinematographer of the 20s and 30s. When I was reading about him, it looks like he was the first camera operator who began using a camera free from a tripod mount. He would walk around the set and shoot scenes with the camera strapped to his stomach. So if you really think about it, he was the first guy to use a Steadicam. So that's pretty cool.
That's neat.
Yeah, The Mummy came a year out after Frankenstein, and I still think it might be my second favorite of the Universal monster movies. Mm-hmm. I think Temple of Doom and The Mummy would make a great double feature because you got that Temple of Doom is by far the pulpiest.
Universal horror is a great choice for this.
Yeah. But this Temple of Doom is like the pulpiest of the franchise, and there's so many set pieces and characters and villains paying homage to, I feel like, the Mummy, and you got the archaeological mysticism, the trap room, especially foreboding temples and that subterranean layers. It's a fun pairing, and it's
unfortunately
on video.
though. What the 90s version has going for it is that everybody in that movie is hot. That's not the case.
Yeah, you could also go with that. It'd be a good, but the Mummy is ripping off this franchise. That's the thing.
That's
also.
true too.
Yeah,
also true.
It's all good stuff. All good stuff. Yeah. So yeah, that's my pick. All right.
That's awesome.
Let us know, anybody listening, if you like our picks, if you might pick any of these for a movie night. All right. Okay, last thing we'll do is weekly highlight. If anybody wants to just mention anything that they watched or did this past week. We didn't talk about this prior to hitting the record button, so I don't know if anyone has anything they want to mention.
Beetlejuice.
Yeah?
I thought it was a lot of fun.
Okay.
Highly enjoyed it. Second
Same.
largest September box office ever. I was not expecting that. Impressive. Huge numbers.
110 million, I think, or around there. Yeah.
It did well.
I liked it.
It's good. Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's good.
All right. I didn't really get to see. I saw a few things this week, but nothing I really is worth. Hey, one thing I will say, I'm almost done with my Robert Altman retrospective. I got like 3 films left. So
That took some friggin' commitment, man.
34 films, almost done. Again, Anthony, I ask myself every night, what have I done with my life?
They can't all be winners.
I know. No, they're not.
See David the Gnome on Nick Jr. There's 25 episodes, and there's a fox, and there's fishes, and there's trolls. It's pretty good.
But what I do want to share a quick story. A week ago, I was visiting my doctor, and this is not a story about, my back or anything like that. But I have had this foot issue, but what he really wanted to ask me, aren't you the guy that does a podcast? Because you were mentioning that 6 months ago. I don't remember doing that. And he asked me, what's the name of your podcast? And I tell him it's Back to the Frame Rate. And he says, I'm traveling to Maine next week, and I really want to listen to something. This is not my primary, but a specialist. And he says, I don't really know how to use my iPhone. And he hands it to me. And can you get your podcast subscribed? Can you subscribe to it on my iPhone? So a doctor with all of his contacts and personal stuff on there hands me his iPhone, and I'm like going through it, subscribing our podcast.
That's awesome.
So it's just really funny that I guess our relationship is a little closer than maybe doctor-patient should, but I just thought it was really funny that I ended up subscribing our podcast to my doctor.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
should have gone into the notes section to see if he typed any bank account codes or anything like that.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if he recruits like 4 more of his friends,
this.
we can say 4 out of 5 doctors recommend.
Oh, that'd be great. Yes, if you're listening, I don't know, but that's all. Not the best story, but I thought that I got a kick out of that. He trusts me enough to hand me over his phone.
I love it.
That's all I got.
I finally watched that Mark Wahlberg movie, Arthur the King, with the dog, where he's a runner.
Oh,
or like a triathlete, and goes and watch it. I had a movie day yesterday. I was watching Temple of Doom. I watched a bunch of other movies, and that was one of them. And it weirdly just made Temple of Doom the second movie I saw that had like a scary bridge moment, which I just didn't expect.
Should have been the pairing.
You should have watched Bridge. You should have watched Bridge to Terabithia after that.
Oh man, that's a
wow.
That's a bummer.
She drowns.
Yeah. Spoilers.
Sorry.
All right.
Jesus.
Next week, we've got Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Anthony, anything you want to plug? Anything you want to mention where people can find you? Or
I think I had some things, but my mind went completely blank the minute you said you were having problems with your foot. I think I just mentally shut down.
I didn't get into details.
No, I want to plug Back to the Frame Rate. Subscribe and share Nathan's podcast.
Recommended by 4 out of 5 doctors in in Massachusetts.
Yes.
In Nathan's foot.
Yeah. Recommended by 1 out of 2 in Nathan's feet.
You get all my doctors to get on that page.
It's the best podcast ever.
Follow Anthony Ambrosino, all of his film endeavors. He does good work. And you can probably find everything he's done on IMDb. Is there a website, Anthony? Or any people want to contact
IMDb's
you?
Fine.
Okay.
People want to contact me, give me a call.
Okay.
I'm easy to find.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, then that's it. That's our show this week. Back to the Frame Rate is part of the Western Media Podcast Network. We wish to thank Brian Ellsworth for our show opening. On behalf of all of us, we bid you farewell from our fallout shelter. Your presence in our underground sanctuary is truly appreciated. We are truly sorry you cannot join us, but we want to express our gratitude for your company. If you are finding solace in our discussions, we kindly ask that you please subscribe and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whichever portal connects you to our broadcast. There you can find more episodes of this podcast and also on our website, backtotheframe.com, and on our socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Threads, all the other ones. I can't even think of them all. And that's at Back to the Frame Rate. Your support is the beacon of light that brightens our confined space. Until we emerge from the fallout, stay with us, keep hope alive, and keep those reviews coming. This is the end of our transmission. Back to the Frame Rate, signing off.
I want you to know it's over.
Well,